I kept running across compelling evidence and credible experts saying that the secret agenda of the banking elite is nothing less than total global domination. At first, I resisted the idea, but I was committed to finding out what was keeping us from thriving, no matter where it might lead. One night I woke up at 3 a.m. with the burning question: if this small group wanted to dominate the entire world, what would they need to control to accomplish it? I jumped out of bed and started making a list. First and foremost, they'd have to control money, and they do. Controlling money allows them to run everything else. They'd need to control energy, and they do. They already control big agriculture and world trade. They're buying up water supplies worldwide. They've got health in their pocket, and they're trying to suppress natural alternatives. Mainly, they'd have to control what information we'd get and how we'd react to it. In America, the internet, our greatest tool for communication and grassroots organizing, is currently not controlled or censored, but its open status is being attacked from all sides. Governments, corporations, and the United Nations are all attempting to take control. For complete domination, dissent has to be controlled. They'd need to take away our rights, spy on ordinary citizens, and track every aspect of our lives. As the day dawned, I knew that a powerful elite had almost everything set up to rule the world. And I had the frightening realization that Big Brother is not just coming, he's here now. We are already in the Matrix. So how do we get out? To envision that, I realized I needed to discover what their ruling structure looks like and how it works. A relatively small group of families, especially the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, Morgans, and Carnegies, along with the Harrimans, the Schiffs, and the Warburgs, have been leading the controlling elite in the West for generations. I'm not implying that every individual in these families is aware of or active in the global domination agenda. However, I'm convinced the heads of these dynasties control the corporate and banking interests that carry out the sinister scheme that is destroying so many lives. Those secretly driving the agenda have been known by many names. Leaked reports confirm that they meet throughout the world, behind closed doors, to discuss their agenda. Then, like clockwork, their plans begin to show up in the media, finance, corporate, government, and military arenas. Of course, not everyone involved in these groups is in on the decision-making. There is a hierarchy of knowledge and participation. One of the primary symbols of the controlling elite is the all-seeing eye. It's on the dollar bill. It's on the American mass surveillance system initially called Total Information Awareness. It's on the British intelligence agency MI5. And it even oversees the Supreme Court complex in Israel, designed and funded entirely by the Rothschilds. I believe they've taken the majestic image of the Cheops pyramid and its legendary metallic capstone and perverted the meaning to represent those at the top being able to track and control all those under them. It's been documented that central bankers even funded both sides of World War II, as well as some of the corporations associated with Hitler's atrocities against the Jews. Since these people have more money than their families would need for generations, and since they have the power to create money, I don't believe wealth is their end goal.
After you have all the material things that you could possibly want in life, what is left to excite you? And for many people, the answer is power, global power. They became intellectually elite. They began to think that they had a plan that was better than anybody else's plan. They got the idea that freedom is dangerous. If you give people freedom, you know what? They're probably not going to use it wisely like we think they should. We are smarter than they are. And for their own good, we should rule them.
As I came to accept the idea of a ruling elite planning for total global domination, I began to hear these same people actually talking more boldly and publicly about it, only they call it the New World Order.
When we are successful, and we will be, We have a real chance at this new world order.
It is a new world order with significantly different and radically new challenges.
A new world order can be created. It's a great opportunity.
Given the condition of our world, a new world order can sound like a great idea. But I had to distinguish between what I was discovering about global domination, a one-world government run by an elite few, and the reality of our global interconnectedness, which is the realization that at a fundamental and even spiritual level, we are not separate, we are all connected. But the agenda for global domination is really the exact opposite. It's a divide and conquer strategy to keep us all pitted against each other, thinking that it's the Democrats or Republicans, the liberals or conservatives who are the problem, when both parties are ultimately serving the same plan. I believe we're heading toward a totalitarian world authority, actually a military dictatorship, run by a tiny elite who have all the power and make all the rules. If they succeed, there'll be nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Think about it. Their grand strategy for global dominance is already being implemented. They are carving up the world into superstates that transcend national boundaries so that we are easier for them to manage. They have already established the European Union and the African Union. Politicians from the United States, Canada, and Mexico, under the title of the Security and Prosperity Partnership, have been working on the northern part of what could arguably be called plans for an American Union. This has been going on for years without citizen or congressional consent. A Pacific Union is already in process. This is the organizational chart for global tyranny, the structure for complete control. Here are two of the most powerful men in Europe talking about moving to a single world government.
It is extremely important that we, in this new ownership of global governance, have, particularly on both sides of the Atlantic, the implementation of the same rules in the same fashion.
2009 is also the first year of global governance, with the establishment of the G20 in the middle of the financial crisis.
On the international level, the central banking elite have put huge organizations in place to implement their policies, including the World Trade Organization, the World Health Organization, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund. John Perkins is a man who knows from decades of his own experience as a so-called economic hitman how the collusion of banks, corporations, and governments has taken over countries around the world.
We use many techniques, but probably the most common is that we'll go to a country that has resources that our corporations covet, like oil, and we'll arrange a huge loan to that country from an organization like the World Bank or one of its sisters, but almost all of the money goes to U.S. corporations, not to the country itself. Corporations like Bechtel and Halliburton, General Motors, General Electric, these types of organizations, and they build huge infrastructure projects in that country, power plants, highways, ports, industrial parks, things that serve the very rich and seldom even reach the poor. In fact, the poor suffer because the loans have to be repaid, and they're huge loans, and the repayment of them means that the poor won't get education, health, and other social services, and the country is left holding a huge debt by intention. We go back, we economic hitmen, to this country and say, look, you owe us a lot of money, you can't repay your debts, so give us a pound of flesh. As soon as one of these anti-American presidents is elected, one of us goes in and says, hey, congratulations, Mr. President. Now that you're president, I just want to tell you that I can make you very, very rich, you and your family. I've got several $100 million in this pocket. If you play the game our way, if you decide not to, over in this pocket I've got a gun with a bullet with your name on it in case you decide to keep your campaign promises and throw us out. Sell our oil companies your oil real cheap, or vote with us at the next UN vote, or send troops in support of ours to someplace in the world such as Iraq. And in that way we've managed to build a world empire with very few people actually knowing that we've done this.
Like many people, I thought a conspiracy for global domination could not really work because basically people are just not that competent. I thought there's no way they could pull off such a scheme at the necessary level of control and secrecy.
One of the false hopes is this is all happening because government is incompetent, and it's a giant mistake, and people really don't know. And of course, that's great air cover for the fact that the system really does know where it's going, and it's going where it wants to go, and it's being successful at it.
Still, I wondered how could something that is so big and corrupt be kept secret?
It's a simple structure, and if it wasn't simple, it wouldn't work. And it can be likened to a compartmentalized pyramid. If you look at any organization today, no matter whether it's a transnational corporation, a university, a government, a secret society, they're all structured as a pyramid. And as the CIA and other intelligence agencies talk about, they have this need-to-know system. Only let people know as much as they need to make their contribution and no more. So you take a bank, an individual bank, not that there is such a thing. At the bottom, you've got the people you see when you pass your check over the counter in the bank. Now, they don't know what the bank manager behind them knows and is discussing. They only know what they need to know to do their job. The bank manager in the office behind them, he doesn't know or she doesn't know what's happening at the next level, and they don't know what's happening at the next level. And eventually you've got a tiny few people at the peak of the pyramid of that banking structure. They're the only ones that know what the real agenda of the bank is and what the direction is that they're going and why.
This kind of compartmentalization explains how the Manhattan Project, which developed the atom bomb in World War II, was kept secret despite having 130,000 people working on it.
When I first let in the scale and the intentions of the agenda, I felt like I had the flu for about 2 weeks. But then it dawned on me. Here was this well-planned, well-orchestrated attempt to squelch human potential, and still our brilliance shines through. Even though we've been systematically distracted and repressed, people have come up with innovative, ingenious solutions to a huge number of the problems that we face. It's not our fault that we didn't recognize how organized and intentional this scheme is. It's our challenge.
I looked at the kind of world the controlling elite have already given us, and I had to ask, what kind of world would we be living in if they had absolute and complete domination over everyone, everywhere? In this new world order of theirs, a tiny number of people would exercise total control over the lives of everyone through a system of intrusive surveillance, violent suppression of dissent, and debt slavery. Imagine tiny islands of opulence surrounded by a sea of misery, where the mission of the military is to protect the haves from the have-nots. I've come to believe that their endgame is truly ominous, and that they will stop at nothing to continue implementing their plan. As difficult as it may be for Americans to accept, I'm now convinced the agenda of the global elite includes destroying the financial strength and sovereignty of the United States. With its history of free speech and armed revolt, America represents the major hurdle to global consolidation of power. If they can succeed in bringing down this country, I believe the international elite intend to transfer the power and productivity of Americans to their one-world dictatorship, gradually taking over our lives in what David Icke calls the totalitarian tiptoe. Think about it. They've got us so deep in debt we can never repay it. They're collapsing the dollar, and they're attempting to replace it with a global IMF currency. This press for a global cashless electronic currency would enable a central authority to financially disable any individual or group in an instant. Now, for the first time in history, international taxes are being proposed under the pretense of addressing climate change. Like a Trojan horse, the suggested treaty unveiled at the 2009 Copenhagen Climate Conference appealed to our concern for the environment while distracting us from the fact that this unprecedented carbon tax would be paid to the World Bank and enforced by global police.